Hey guys, this is Rough Stuff podcast number 3. I'm Garrett, the CEO of Rough Stuff Specialties, and we have Mallory with us.
Hi.
And Greg from Rock and Road Performance, and Ryan, the Rough Stuff sales manager. Hey guys.
Hello. How's it going?
Greg, tell us a little bit about Rock and Road Performance and what you do.
All right. So I own a company called Rock and Road Performance. We're right in the same parking lot as Rough Stuff. We do a full line of metal fabrication for people. So anything from small little brackets, little welding repairs, all the way to full builds, whether it be, we've done furniture, but we mainly specialize in a lot of off-road stuff. And in more detail with the off-road stuff, it's mainly specialized in suspension work. So we do a lot of, link setups and suspension setups and modifying things and making the vehicles ride and, perform as well as they can when they're out there. The other side to it, we also sell, service, and tune a lot of different brands of performance off-road shocks. So like King and Radflow and ADS and all those other companies. So not only can we get those shocks and be a dealer for a lot of those companies, and we can definitely install them in the vehicles that we build, but because we do our own service work and our own tuning, we can really get it that next step, not just throw a set of shocks on there and hope for the best. We can really dial everything in to make it work seamless and help people get the most out of their vehicles that they can.
Right on. You said you made furniture?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh, no, like, it's not very often.
Do you also do woodworking, or are you talking metal furniture?
Most of it's metal. So my dad has a woodworking side of things. He does a lot of furniture. My wife kind of does a mix of both. I do a lot more of the metal side of things. But I just like helping people out a lot of the time. And I do this because it's a labor of love. It's not, I love doing it. So I've had a lady, it was a little while ago, bought a table at a flea market or something, or a thrift store, and it didn't quite fit in the specific area of her kitchen. And not knowing what to do, I guess people Google metal fabricators, and I come up on there pretty easy. And she brought it on by, and I had absolutely no problem. And we just cut and shortened a couple things just so it would actually fit in her kitchen.
Was it better. Like one of those metal diner tables? Because when I think metal kitchen table, I don't see that very often.
This was more of like a stool, or not like a stool. It was a kind of a rack you'd put in the corner. It was a little too wide, and a little too tall for what she was putting on there. I think she had some water dispenser she was putting on top, and it was too tall for her, so she wanted everything shortened.
Okay.
So a lot of interesting stuff like that. I really like mixing it up. You do the same thing all the time. It kind of gets a little bit boring. So I really try and find different things to do or help a lot of people out.
So Rock and Road is your passion project. That's what we would call that.
Absolutely.
So metal fab, shock tuning. How did you get started, and what's your educational background, and what got you into the business?
Well, on our website, which I think we'll end up talking about in a little bit, my dad ended up buying a Jeep Wrangler when I was 11 years old, and kind of started doing more family stuff together, a little bit of wheeling and camping, and kind of started modifying things. I helped him put the first lift kit on it and everything just when I was young. I've always liked taking things apart and fixing things and figuring out how things work. And after I graduated high school, I really started off-roading a lot more. And I went to Sierra College, which is actually where I met Ryan.
I was going to ask you guys that. How did you know each other before you even worked here?
Yeah, we've known each other since, I think I was probably
2007 or something.
Yeah, because I graduated high school in 2007, so it was that first semester when we started Sierra College.
Did you take a class together?
Yeah, I think it was manual transmissions.
Yeah, so Ryan has a twin brother, Ron, and
were they both in the class?
They were not in the same class. This was really bad. So it was like Monday, Wednesday with Ryan in manual transmissions, and I had Tuesday, Thursday with Ron in suspension and steering.
How long did it take you to figure that out?
It took me almost half the semester to figure out the different people. I started talking about a story we talked about yesterday. He's all, what are you talking about?
Our staff does that all the time. I think Taylor, my assistant, was like, I didn't know for 2 months, and was talking to them about the same thing.
I figured it out now, and it's really easy to tell a difference.
To me, they look so different, but I guess we're just used to it.
And when I had them on different days, too, it was like...
So you can't remember.
And back then I didn't wear the glasses. glasses. So
And you probably didn't have a beard. You guys both
we were
probably
both
didn't
pretty
have
clean
beards.
cut back then too.
And you both probably had Forerunners too, huh?
No, I forget what he had, but I was driving a little rodeo back then.
We'll have to talk about that later. That's funny.
So yeah, I went to Sierra College. I spent 2 years in the automotive building. I took 70 units of automotive, and then I took a bunch of welding classes while I was there as well. Sometimes schedules didn't work out. I had a gap, and I actually went in and got a job as an automotive technician when I was 18, as soon as I can get in the industry. And I've been an automotive technician. I think I was a technician for 9 3/4 years, almost 10 years. But I've always liked building things and fabricating things, and definitely in the off-road stuff. And I built my own Jeep and did a lot of modifications, and it was kind of fun helping other people build stuff as kind of a hobby, from building everything up and wheeling it and trying to break things or really modify stuff. I think when I decided to build my first suspension system, it was really when off-road was getting much bigger, and I think it was 2006, and a lot of the lift kits that were aftermarket, you bolt on or something, were really limited in off-roading as far as rock crawling, which is what I was really interested in, was really growing, and the suspension systems out there, like double triangulated four link, started coming into play, and a lot of people started moving into coilovers and getting away from leaf springs and everything. So it was still, I know it had been going on for a while, but technology had been changing quite a bit in the recent time. So I did a bunch of research, and I designed and built my own suspension system in my Jeep, and currently most of it is still there, and it's been working great ever since. And it was really cool to be able to design something and watch it work. I almost got more pleasure out of watching other people drive my Jeep off-road, so I could see everything move and work. I was always fascinated with that stuff and how things functioned, and I did really well in the automotive field, being able to figure out why something wasn't working, and how to reverse engineer it and figure it out and make it happen again. But I don't know if it was just the where I worked when I was automotive tech. I worked at an independent shop, so we worked on pretty much anything that came in the door. It wasn't like a specialty thing, so you're always challenged. Everything's always different. You could work on something from the 30s and then turn around and have to do something on a brand new BMW. So it really kept you on your toes and really made you stay sharp. But the area that we worked in, people don't save up a lot of times for their car to break. They don't understand what's going on. A lot of automotive people have a bad, history. I hear a lot of horror stories about people getting ripped off or things just not getting done right. And people have that predisposition to feel like that's going to happen to them every time. So it doesn't matter how smart or clean or accurate you are, how much education you have, which it was constant schooling throughout that 10 years, always going to night classes and update courses, and I had my smog license and 10 ASEs and my associate's degree in automotive. And you almost keep getting beat down all the time. No matter how good you are, it's still the same car. If it's not a very good car to begin with, I mean, you repair what's damaged, but it's still run down and older. People just aren't really as happy. In this type of stuff, building things, people get so excited about it, and they'll put a bunch of money and time and effort into something, and you get to see them light up when it comes out just right, and you get to see them use it and go on adventures and have stories and stuff. You don't normally get that in your regular, getting a work vehicle or anything.
Right.
So I met my wife, and her brother's pretty big into the automotive stuff as well and building things. So we kind of got together, and we both decided that we wanted to start a company doing fabrication, and his background was shock tuning and stuff at a suspension shop in Roseville. And so we decided to start this business together. And then in about 6 months of starting the business, I was trying to work full-time and do the business. We got too busy, and I couldn't handle doing both of them at the same time. I ended up having to quit my other job, which is probably one of the hardest things I ever did. I had only had 2 jobs ever. I'm very loyal and, work as hard as I can.
You were there for quite a while, right? Like
8.5 years. Yeah. And it was like my family.
It's scary to put all your eggs in one basket now for a new company and a new idea, and it all relies on you and your partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And then with TJ and I, he had always, his background in schooling and everything was more law enforcement, and he'd been trying to do CHP and a couple other things. And shortly after we started the business, he got an acceptance letter as a warden for fishing game, or to go to the Fishing Game Academy. So he ended up doing that for almost all the first year. I was kind of on my own, so that was a little stressful. But within that first year, he ended up getting a job as a warden, which is what he's currently doing now. So now I've kind of taken over Rock and Road. He's in the background on occasion, helping out with things and just hanging out and doing stuff. But within that first year, just out of a 2-car garage, it just blew up. So I couldn't do enough. I didn't have enough space with where we were. So I ended up looking for a good new location, and I found a home right here next to Ruffstuff, which is awesome because you guys do mostly parts and stuff, sales, and I do almost all labor.
Yeah, no, it's good for us because I know people are always asking us like where to push people to. I mean, Ryan, you get all the customers that saying, well, who do I use? And it's also knowing who to trust because
we don't want to send our customers to someone who, we're not comfortable with.
Yeah. And so it's like really convenient having you here for sure.
Well, it's really nice if I ever need anything. I just walk across the parking lot.
Yeah. I'm curious, you said in 2006 was when you started building your Jeep, right? Mm-hmm. And getting into suspension. At that time, that was when Dan first started Ruffstuff. Mm-hmm. Where were you buying? I know you were fabricating you were probably cutting your own tabs, your own brackets, but if you needed Heims and whatnot, where were you getting those products then?
In reality, I think because Ruffstuff was just starting and I was just starting as well, the companies that were big were like Curry and Genrite and stuff. So I ended up with Johnny Joints at the time.
That's what I was assuming.
So that's what I ended up using. All my parts, it was kind of ugly. It was all square tube and everything, and I had to do everything with a grinder in the garage. And I didn't have a welder or anything like that. My uncle did, so I ended up having to make my parts, like kind of piece them together and then hop in the car and drive 30 minutes to my uncle's house to weld the parts together so I can go back home to put them back on the Jeep or something. I forget how long it took me to do it, but I remember just being so involved with it. I would work my 10-hour day or something at the shop that I worked at, or 11 hours. I'd go home and I'd just spend 4 or 5 more hours laying under it, picturing what I'm going to do, thinking about how all the individual components are going to work together and what's going to be the best way to design it. And for my first go around for that stuff, it's been holding up. Like I said, everything in the back of my Jeep is all still original.
Is it still all square tube?
Yeah, actually, yeah, the back is, and it's hideous. But I think it took 6 or 7 years. I went back and cut all the front out and redid it just so it was more updated, and ran out of time. I got a huge load up of work and everything, and my personal projects end up going to the back. So, and every time I want to change it, it just works so well when I actually do go off-roading that I lose motivation, other aesthetics.
I guess you kind of already explained it a little bit with the Jeep, but like with the what got you interested in like tinkering and working with your hands? Was it always like that, or did it come from the Jeep, or did?
I think we'd always been working on stuff. My dad has probably been a pretty big part of that. He grew up in a bad neighborhood and with not a lot of stuff, and he was always designing. He had to build his own toys. He had to Frankenstein his own bikes together when he was a kid, and he's always been engineering and building things for fun. And I found it easy to learn that kind of stuff from him. I always want to know how stuff works, so I ended up taking things apart. I found he would design something, and then I would find like 2 more steps I can go farther just to make it a little bit better or refine it a little bit. And
isn't he some like electrical engineer, right? Or
no, he installs security systems for
that's
everything.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, he's got a whole library full of physics and mathematics books and all kinds of stuff, and he does a lot of his own SolidWorks designs and building his own things.
When you were a kid, were you taking apart things that your mom was like, quit taking this apart?
I usually, we had a lot of erector sets and Legos and
so you had your own
so,
things.
Yeah, we had a lot of our own things.
You weren't
to take
taking
apart.
her electric can opener and she was standing there with a can of corn,
no.
really frustrated to make dinner.
Yeah, no.
So other than knowing Ryan, you guys knew each other before you worked here. How did you get connected with Ruffstuff? I remember when I first saw your guys' trailer in our parking lot, you and TJ, and that had to have been That was just when I first met you, and I think that was maybe around 2013.
We established the business in June 2015.
Okay, it was 2015.
Yeah.
I remember I was still in the front office, so that's why I remember. It was not too long ago.
It's actually a huge part of that was all TJ, my brother-in-law, because I'm kind of an introverted guy. Unless it's a subject I'm really into, then I can talk forever, which I try not to, but it gets away from me. But if it's a subject like when I was taking general ed classes and stuff, I'm super quiet. I don't really talk to anybody. It takes me a long time to really warm up to people. But TJ is the complete opposite. He can walk in somewhere, meet someone for 5 minutes, and they're telling him deep life stories and all kinds of things. And he made those connections with people, and it was so easy for him. So actually, he was the one that turned me onto Rough Stuff. Back when you guys were on Swetzer.
Yeah, I remember him coming by.
Yeah, so he would come by and he'd introduce me to you guys and stuff. And
they were building like that. Was it the Scout?
Or
what was it?
No, we started work on the Scout a little bit after that. I think we were working on one of his Toyotas, and it was like either a 4Runner or something. It was quite a while ago.
What was your wife's build though? Wasn't she building
hers? Is a Scout.
Yeah, that's why they were coming in. I thought, but
yeah, I don't remember.
Anyways.
It was a long time ago. Yeah. I think those are some of the first Rough Stuff parts I bought.
Yeah,
was back then.
What are some of your favorite tried and true welding equipment, off-road gear items, or shop necessities?
Definitely. What we started with is actually TJ. It was TJ's welder that he had got. It was a little 220. It was a Lincoln MIG welder, and it was really good. Actually, we still have it over at the shop. It's kind of a good backup. I think we keep it spooled with a different size wire. And it worked really good. You could really build some big stuff with it. It was just more of, we were really pushing its capabilities. It was a hobby, or it is a hobby size. So it's only got like a 30% duty cycle. You could really overwork that thing pretty easy. So when we ended up needing a bigger welder, actually Tim from Bleepin Jeep, who's done a bunch of videos for Rough Stuff and everything, he was a big fabricator up in Oregon, and he had a buddy that had bought a Miller 212 auto set, and he bought it. I think he ran half a spool of wire through it and just sat in his garage. And we happened to be looking for a larger welder since we just started doing a lot more fabrication. And he brought it down. We got a screaming deal on it, and that thing has been super reliable ever since. So I know there's a lot of rivalry between Miller or Lincoln or whatever. Yeah, I'm really not that. I don't have that huge of a preference. I do tend to pick a brand and just stick with it, kind of for better or for worse. But I have been really, really happy with a lot of the Miller stuff. We have a Miller Dynasty 200DX TIG welder that we use all the time. We have our 212 auto set, which is not a full professional size, but I've never been able to beat that thing up enough. And it's been able to do everything that we've been trying to do. Our plasma cutter, it's a Miller, or it's a Lincoln Torchmate.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask because that used to be
ours,
right? It's the old
table that you guys
We
had.
loved that thing. It's awesome for cutting tabs, brackets,
oh absolutely,
all kinds of things. We even used to do. Garrett used to do like art pieces, and those were the ladies love them.
Garrett out with some art. Never,
yeah, the ladies love them.
Yeah, he just got some like a railing piece out for us the other day.
Oh, the brackets, the floor brackets.
Yeah.
Those are cool.
Yeah, I was supposed to get 4, and I bought 3.
Thanks for cutting that off.
He saved the day.
Oh, it's no problem. But having good equipment you can rely on is definitely a big thing. All of our plasma cutters we have over there are Hypertherm, which is some of the best stuff you can have out there. Just something that's going to work day in and day out. You don't have to mess with it all the time, and is very consistent, is very important.
Do you have like a wish list of something you would like to have or something you really wish you had?
Well, I'm always trying to grow, and every job I do, I don't always do the same thing every time. I try and push each build I do or each thing I build farther. How can I design it? Originally, when I started, it was just I really just need it to work. Now I know it's going to work. How can I make it more efficient? How can I make it look cooler? After doing so much of the fabrication stuff, I'm like, what's really my next step? Just earlier last year, very late last year, we ended up picking up our first lathe. And that's been a complete game changer, being able to modify little parts, just make things fit a lot better. A lot of times you'll get something that's just a little bit, too big, or, You just need to make a hole a little bit bigger, and drill bits are not very good for that. So just being able to punch things out and make things a little bit better, it just fits so much better, and it's way less headache. So that was a huge game changer. So the next thing I would probably say is like a mill, which would definitely be another game changer for us.
What kind of lathe do you have?
It's, we're a small business and still growing, so budget's always tight. So we ended up getting a Grizzly brand. It's a 36 or a 12 by 36 gunsmithing lathe. The gunsmithing ones has a little bit bigger bearings and some other.
Has a bigger bore too, right?
It does have a bigger bore.
Yeah.
It's got a through bore with spider on the back, so you can actually put much longer stock through it. We did get a combination mill lathe, so it does have a small mill head on it. Found out very quickly it's not very rigid, and the more rigid your machines can be, the better they're going to perform. So it gets the job done, but converting it from the lathe setup to the mill setup takes like half an hour, and then you're done with your job in 10 minutes, and you swap it back. And so having a standalone would definitely be a lot better.
For sure.
So what have been some of your favorite projects you've worked on? Anything larger scale?
Well, every time, like I was saying earlier, I try and push each job farther and farther and see how much better I can do something, or how much more streamlined I can make it, and how much cooler I can make it. And a lot of times, just like everybody else, especially me, when I'm doing a build, a lot of it is based around budget. What can I afford at the time? And getting a customer every once in a while that has the budget and really likes the stuff that I build just goes, hey, I want you to kind of run with it. If, like, here's what we have to work with, do what you want, make it as cool as you want. And we just had a job recently like that, and it was a 2006 LJ. I think on our Instagram and our website, I think we have a blog post and pictures of it and everything. And the guy basically came in. I met him during the Ruffstuff swap meet. Since we're in the same parking lot, I kind of didn't do a lot of work, but I had all the doors open so I could talk to people and kind of show them around the shop and see what's going on and make those connections. And he looked at the Ultra 4 car that we had built, and he basically said, I want all of this suspension, and it's a 4500 stock mod class car. And he's like, I want all of this on my Jeep. So we decided to try and make that happen. And we're limited in the Ultra 4 stuff on suspension capabilities, so we were able to push a little bit farther with his. But his is daily driver, 2006 LJ with a Hemi in it, automatic transmission, 4-speed Atlas, and Dana 60s front and rear. We ended up doing a triangulated 3-link in the front, I think with 2.5-inch ADS, 14-inch travel coilovers, and hydraulic bump stops. The rear was a triangulated 4-link with trailing arms. And we stretched the wheelbase 7 inches to 110. And we had a coilover, bypass shock, and bump stops in the back on 37-inch tires. The whole thing sat 4 inches of lift over stock. So headlight to headlight's almost the same size as my Jeep. But he's got bigger tires, way more wheelbase. We're strapped in 18 inches of wheel travel in the back and 14 in the front. And it's like driving a cloud. The thing is so smooth and comfortable. It's got a lot of power. And just having a customer that had the budget to let us be creative and push things farther and do things, we don't normally do, that's probably the most fun.
That sounds like a fun build.
Yeah, for sure.
I need one of those for a mommy car. I told Garrett I wanted a Jeep, and he's like, no, you don't, because he's thinking stock. He's like, you don't want a Jeep. Well, now I want a Greg Jeep.
I just know her personality.
The LJ is like 11 inches longer or something. He has no back seat in there. He's got tons of room for, groceries and stuff. And
See?
I just have a TJ. I got to pack everything real careful. I have no room back there.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Do you have any personal builds in the future that you'd like to do?
Yeah, my wife and I are both car people. So I think between the two of us, we've ended up with like 7 vehicles or something. And most of them run, but we do have some good project ones. The way my wife and I actually met, she graduated with her bachelor's degree from Davis in graphic design, but she's always been in car stuff too. And she had bought a 69 International Scout 800A from, I think it was Tim's grandfather's, and it was in a farm up in Oregon, just been sitting on their property for a long time. She bought that.
Tim at Bleepin?
Yeah, for Bleepin Jeep, yeah. She brought it down here, and she actually took an automotive class at Sierra College to start learning how to work on it herself, and she was going to kind of fix it up and get it going. At the time, I was TAing, so I'd already taken all my automotive classes, but I really loved the college and what the college was doing for everybody. So I would go in on my days off or night classes, and you get one teacher with 35 students. In the lab section too, you can't watch everybody, and there's a lot of people who have questions, or they're scared to approach the teacher. Well, I was very similar in age to a lot of the students. So I would come in, I'd take over half the class for the teacher. I'd make sure everyone's, doing what they need to do safely. And if they have any questions, help them out. And I was helping or TAing for a intro to automotive class, and Carly was in it, my wife. And that's actually how we had met. I think at the time, her transmission started making noise on our Honda, and I needed a logo for my off-road club that we had started with Ryan and Ron. And so she was making the logo for us, and I went to her house and helped her brother pull the transmission out, and we rebuilt it there. And then right after we pulled it out, TJ, who I'd only met for like the last hour, he's like, "Hey, you want to go wheeling?" And I'm like, "Sure." And he makes a phone call, and like 7 Toyotas show up at the driveway, and we all head off somewhere. And that was pretty fun.
Everyone has that friend, right?
Yeah. So we obviously started hanging out more and everything. And after the semester had ended, we started dating, and then I ended up taking over the project, the Scout project, and it got along pretty far. And then right after we got married, I got busy with a bunch of other stuff as life happened, so it kind of sat. But it has made its way back in the shop, and everything I did back then was a little uglier. So I ended up cutting everything back off, and we're redoing it and really trying to push, because I have obviously time. I don't have a customers yelling at me or anything to get it done. So I have time to really push things and make things as nice as I can, kind of as a showpiece for the shop as well, and give my wife something really cool to drive around in.
That's
cool.
nice.
Yeah.
How do you know the guys at Bleepin Jeep? Because you've brought them up a few times. I know you've gone wheeling with them. How did you get connected with them? Because they're pretty huge on YouTube.
Again, TJ.
Okay. Maybe I need to meet TJ.
So TJ, in taking a bunch of his classes, I think he ended up going to Weed, California to take, I don't remember what class it was, but Tim, who was growing up in Shasta at the time, was also taking a class, and I think that's how they met. And TJ, being so easy to connect with people, started hanging out with Tim. So he had been originally friends with TJ, and through TJ is how I met Tim. Tim he still lives in the Medford area, Ashland, Medford area, and he would come down here all the time, and we'd either build stuff or he'd teach us some of his welding stuff, since he was a fabricator up there for a long time. And Tim, I think, was the first one to get signed on as a person who would contribute, or a contributor to Bleepin Jeep. And he had never met Matt or anything like that before. And Matt's from Knoxville, Tennessee. So I think they met online somehow, and it just kind of grew from there. And just knowing Tim, it's been a big thing, because any products we build, they're Bleepin Jeep is pretty heavy on the Cherokee stuff. So Tim would come down and we'd talk about a product that we wanted to build or something to make it better, because nothing on the aftermarket is quite what we're looking for, and we could kind of refine it and make it a little bit better. So we got pushed to build some more Cherokee stuff, and then we do install videos on it and go test it out. And I think there's an older employee at Ruffstuff who was a sales guy, Rob. He was part of the Cali Grown Wheelers Off-Road Club or something, so there's a lot of Cherokees. So like our first cross members I designed, I built a couple of them and brought them down there, and since then we've made a couple revisions, and I think we did a big video a couple of years ago with Tim on building up his green machine, his green Cherokee, and we've had that up on our website and been selling quite a few of those. So I think I went quite a ways around that story, but
it's still interesting. I asked earlier, you talked about your Ultra 4 car. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So my buddy Travis and I, we've been buddies for quite a long time. I think I met him through his brother at Sierra College in a welding class, Christopher. And Travis was doing Destruction Derby at the time, and they wanted help in the pits, and they wanted to do a tow rig. So I brought my Jeep down to the Auburn Destruction Derby at the Auburn Fairgrounds there. And after the round was over, we'd pull the cars out, and it was a lot of fun. And like 10 years after doing that and wheeling together and everything, we got the shop. I wanted to build something I can showcase because I'm always trying to do something different. And but racing is kind of out of the scope for me, I think. But Travis is doing the derby thing and being very competitive in automotive sports. He wanted to do it. So through my connections, I tried to help get him as many sponsors as we could. And I said I would sponsor the whole build as far as the chassis and everything else. So Ruffstuff was a huge part of that. I think Tim has done a couple Bleepin Jeep videos with that. And we talked to ADS. I think Rough Country and Warren were big people that helped out. And that was all through the connections Tim has made from Bleepin Jeep and going to SEMA and talking to all those guys. So what we ended up building is we wanted to build a car that wasn't, it was more feasible for the beginner guy, something that has a little bit more restrictions. So the playing field is more level for the people getting into it. So in the stock class, I feel like those guys are a little crazy. You got to have some cojones to race in that, because those vehicles will beat you up pretty good. You're super limited. So in the stock mod class, which is what we're in, the 4500 class, it's pretty open, but there's select factors that really limit it, like mechanical steering is required. You can't have more than 14 inches of wheel travel, no trailing arms, no cantilevers, has to be full-bodied, resemble a production model vehicle. You're limited to 37-inch tires. So at that point, I felt like we could get into that class and still be fairly level with a lot of the other people because those restrictions are there. So we ended up designing, I wanted something different, something that would stand out. Travis actually had an old 30s Dodge cab sitting at his property in Meadow Vista, and we ended up using the grill and a couple other parts from that. And it's a 39 Dodge pickup, all kind of rotted out. But it's got a 502 cubic inch big block in it, automatic transmission, a behemoth drivetrain, billet aluminum 205. It's got Ruffstuff axle housings on it. A lot of the tabs and heims and tubing and everything was all purchased over at Ruffstuff. And it was a huge, big project, huge undertaking because we had a little bit of a time crunch. I was trying to build the whole car almost by myself after hours and do all the customer jobs at the same time. And that definitely took a huge toll. But having something super awesome to showcase and have good sponsors and more relationships with. And what it also shows is all the same technology in the parts that we build on the race car is exactly the same stuff I translate into all of my customer builds. And we show that anything that we build, we beat the crap out of it and we make sure it can handle it. So if the customer decides to go somewhere or jump the rig or something, I know whatever we've built is going to be able to handle that. They don't have to worry about something coming apart or something silly breaking on the trail or there being a clearance issue with something. We spend a lot of time in the little detail work. And I spent a lot of time in the chassis. It's all TIG welded to make sure, to showcase that we spend a lot of time in the detail stuff, making fitment a huge priority, and safety as well.
I have a different question too. Like, if you were to start over again with knowing what you know now, what would you build as your first rig, and what kind of drivetrain would you do? Because everyone starts out with something simple like a Jeep, then they start doing suspension upgrades, and they find out the axles suck, and they upgrade the axles, and they go through all the process of building a rig, and getting all the weak links out. What would you do?
I don't know of too many vehicles that are really that good right out of the gate. Yeah, I think everything has got to be heavily modified. I think I got pretty lucky with the Jeep though. It was a '97 TJ, first year of the all linked, all coil sprung Wranglers, so it had a nice sturdy full frame on it. It already had the link style suspension on there. Most of my buddies were all Toyota stuff with the leaf springs, and with the link suspension, it's generally a smoother ride. The way it handles and predicts, everything is super predictable and comfortable. So I feel like I kind of got spoiled with that, and it was a good thing at the same time. I've had that Jeep. I think I've been driving it since I was 11. I wouldn't change anything. I'd still stick with that. I think I'll have it when I die.
So, what year was it? 97?
97.
97 Seafoam TJ with JK
I think
axles.
it's like a moon glow jade color or something. We got extra money off of it at the dealership when my dad bought it because of the color. But it was great in high school because the girls always liked it. It was cute.
Yeah. That's your secret. Would you like to share any tips with our listeners regarding welding or automotive or running a business? I know a lot of sales calls we get, I think, Ryan, you might agree, are about welding.
Yeah.
So
especially when it comes to installing a lot of our products, since the majority of our stuff is going to require welding.
Yeah. So the sales office, if we could just direct all those calls to you, that would be great. Do you have any tips about getting started? Maybe if you're not, like a born natural fabricator like yourself, what do you suggest?
I think a big part of it, people get frustrated. They get overwhelmed with a big project. You got a lot of little things going on. I think you just got to take your time. It's it's a lot easier when it's something that you love. But if you just take the time and try and chunk it out into little pieces, it's not so bad when you can bite off little pieces at a time. And just take your time, cleanliness, fitment, all those things. Everything's going to fit together a lot easier. It's going to weld a lot easier. Everything's going to function a lot smoother. You'll have a lot less headaches. I know some people get impatient and just start chopping and hacking and slapping things together. And if it doesn't fit well and it doesn't go together well and you don't weld it very well and it ends up coming apart on the trailer or, heaven forbid, on the road or something like that, it's just going to be a whole bad experience. So just take your time. I feel like a lot of people, I think we're going to talk about a wheel and tip or something like that. A lot of people go, oh, it's just my weekend beater rig, and they go beat on it all weekend and then go put it in the garage, or it sits on the trailer and they take it right back out to the trail. They don't look at anything or maintain anything, and I feel like most of the frustrations and stuff people have are just not caring about it. You're going to have a bad weekend if you just keep beating on it and it falls apart on the trail, and then you spend your whole weekend trying to get it back off the trail, and you're like, oh, this thing's a piece of junk. I think putting your heart into something, actually caring about your vehicle and looking over things, and you really get to know it, and you can really take care of like 95% of any problems you're going to have way before you ever get on the trail. A big kind of example of that is in Ultra 4 racing, like King of the Hammers. I think our last race was 168 miles. That's a long time. First lap is 92 miles of desert. That desert will rattle all kinds of stuff apart on your car. But if you take the time to prep everything, make sure every bolt is tight, you don't have hairline fractures on any brackets or components. It's all metal. Things fatigue and fall apart. Happens to everybody. But if you stay vigilant and catch up on those things ahead of time and make sure your fitment's good and everything acts the way it needs to, you'll have way less problems. I think all of Hammers, we had like a flat tire and some bent links or something, but it's kind of part of it when you're beating on stuff that hard.
Yeah, so come up with a plan, prioritize it, be patient, have some discipline.
Yeah.
Do you have any business advice being a business owner? Anything you would change or do differently?
I'd probably pull way more hair out if I didn't love it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress and stuff. I think it's tough when you start a company or you do something because you love it. Like my old boss when I was a tech, he started his own shop when he was very young. I think he was 18 at the time, and he loved it. But then you get bigger into it, and now you start getting pulled away. Like I have a huge workload. So we end up finding an employee or two. Things start moving a little bit better, but now on the business side of it is progressing. I'm not doing as much as what I love. I end up having to oversee a lot more stuff, or the clerical background side of it really takes me away from a lot of that stuff. So if I didn't love it, the amount of stress just from everything else kind of would make it not as fun. So loving it really makes a huge difference. And another big thing is my wife does a lot of the background stuff. So a lot of the bookkeeping, and she does a lot of our blog posts and our website stuff, and trying to make sure our social media is going the way it should be, and everything else is a huge thing. Support, I think, is massive too. From her side of the family and my side of the family, I've had nothing but support from both sides. And a lot of these other companies like Ruffstuff has been huge at supporting my company.
Yeah, I remember when I was like just a lot younger doing iron work. I used to do like railings and ornamental iron work and stuff. And I used to think like running a business was just doing like the fun stuff of it, like building.
I wish.
Yeah. And every time I tried to do my own thing, it's like, man, there's so much other stuff you have to do. And
awesome. Bills, phone calls, emails, and
customer relationships and
running parts. Yeah. We don't have a secretary or anything like that. I do answer all of the phone calls. I don't know how many times I've started, like, I've had a 3-foot long weld I've needed to do on something, and I'll just start, and I can feel my pocket start vibrating, and I'm like, oh, there goes the phone. And sometimes I gotta let those go and just finish the work that I'm doing, because quality is very important. So, but I always return those calls, and I think I feel bad because some of my emails don't get replied to as often, but it's hard when I'm in the shop all the time, jumping back on the computer and making sure I stay on top of all that. Hoping to change that at some point.
Ryan, how do you guys in the sales office rely on Greg? Like, what do you guys like use him for?
So there's a lot of times customers they think that we do custom work here. So it's great having Greg over there as a referral, especially if it's something. There's some stuff that Greg does. And it's like, oh, if we don't know the answer to it, usually he's the one to go to. So there's a lot of times for customer support stuff, I'll ask them some questions, and then I'll get back to our customers, especially when it comes to things like, setting up suspensions and coilovers, things like that. I'll oftentimes send them over to Greg, because he'll be the one to know.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of your favorite places to go wheeling?
Hands down is Fordyce. It's one of the closer trails. I live in Lincoln, and going up 80 is super easy. I think by the time I can get to the front of the Rubicon, I can already be in the first water crossing of Fordyce. Fordyce, you tend to get, it's kind of a smaller community, because there's a lot of people around here, which I find surprising, terrified of Fordyce. The water's too deep, the rocks are too big, and I always like to challenge and build things that can accommodate that challenge. It's close, it's quiet, it's cool, because there's a lot of people that don't really like the trail or get scared of it or something. You end up running into the same people all the time, which is kind of cool. It's like an extra little family up there in the hills. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say Fordyce is probably by far my favorite place to wheel.
Do you have a bucket list of somewhere you'd like to go? Maybe out of state or?
I have made a little bit of trip to Moab. I would really like to do the Easter Jeep Safari and see a lot more of that stuff out there. I think I've only done Hell's Revenge. It was in a rental Jeep. We just found ourselves out there, and we're like, we got a day to kill.
Did you get the insurance for that one?
Oh, we did, yes. That was the first time ever driving a JK too. It was weird. That was quite a while ago. Also, Tim lives up in the Oregon area, right next to, Warren and all those people is a Tillamook forest. So I would really like, I guess it's a lot more like Hammer's, huge and wide open, but it's more dense forest and everything else. So that's another place I'd really like to go, is up to the Tillamook forest.
Nice. Do you guys often go out together?
Yeah, I think, because probably my second time to Fordyce was with Greg. Was that your first time when your dad and uncle went out with us too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much we did the entire Fordyce trail together for the first time. And that was like right after I'd gotten my 4Runner. We went with probably a group, 4 or 5 rigs?
Yeah.
None of us had been there before, so it was just all a bunch of inexperienced guys going out to Fordyce just to check it out. And
that's how it should be.
Yeah, we ended up doing the whole trail with minor damage and not a whole lot of fixes that we had to do on the way through. So
Fordyce is pretty tough, huh? Like, isn't it? I remember doing it like a long time ago. I thought it was tougher than the Rubicon.
Oh, it's much tougher.
Didn't we go snow wheeling up there with the Australians?
Yeah, but we barely
I think we ended up
rocks.
just pulling. Yeah, I think we pulled Critty on my snowboard behind Garrett's Toyota. Like they'd never seen snow because they were from Australia. And they were like, we'd never seen snow. We're like, we'll take you.
That's funny.
And then we just pulled him on my snowboard behind the Toyota. I guess we didn't do a lot of wheeling that day.
Yeah. You guys probably just barely made it in.
We got to like the entrance. And
the staging area.
The staging area. We're just playing around.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to know if you have any wild trail stories.
I would say, what was it? It was almost 8 or 9 years ago. We decided to go wheeling at Fordyce, and another Fordyce story. And I think it was the first night. That night, it was supposed to be the first snow up there. So I think it was 40 degrees during the day. It's pouring rain, super cold. And we came in through the committee side. And that committee crossing was only like halfway up our tires deep in water. So it really wasn't bad at all. But it was pouring rain, and the whole trail is in like a little valley, and it's all downhill. And we were going down the trail. So the next water crossing was halfway up my doors. And then the water crossing after that was actually over my hood. And we had another one farther down the trail that was going to be even deeper. And I think Ron made it all the way through the water.
Yeah, you went first.
I think Ron went first.
Oh, Ron went first.
And I was like, that guy's crazy. That's deep water. And then my heart pounding, I was able to make it through. And then I think Ryan got like 10 feet in and hydro locked the whole motor.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I made it about halfway through. And then I didn't have a snorkel or anything. The intake, behind the headlight on those old Toyotas ended up sucking water. I was sitting in a spot where the water was flowing into the door and up over my lap. And I was able to kind of use the starter to kind of crank it up to a little high point. So less water was coming in at that point. And then I'm like, well, it cranked that far, and I cranked it again, ended up blowing a piston out the side of the block. And at that point, I was dead in the river. And so I had to flag them down. The water was rushing so loud. I was like, we were having to like use the walkie-talkies and shout to each other to even hear each other. So they ended up having to come back across while also dodging my truck.
I think Ron actually ran into you.
Yeah, Ron ran into me, bumped off the side of me to get around.
And the water swept all the tools out of the bed of his truck.
Yeah.
Oh
He
my
lost all
gosh.
his tools, so we just had a few tools that I had and what Greg fit in his TJ. And it took us probably
like
at least
2 hours to get that
2
thing
hours
out
just to
of
get
the
it
river.
out of the river.
Did it run after that, or was it totally
Oh no,
dead?
it was done. Like I didn't notice it until like we had to leave it out there for a while. But when we
Yeah,
came
so-
back for it and I got it home and I started taking things apart, all of a sudden I could see light shining through, and I peeked down and I'm like, oh, there's a hole completely through the engine block
Oh,
where
no.
the piston rod had swung around and put 2 holes in it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's what the problem is.
Yeah, so you blew it up in the second water crossing if you're coming up from the bottom. And then we got it out, and then we had a chain tied from my Jeep to Ron's Toyota pickup to your 4Runner.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got all the way to windshield 2, and we were towing back up the hill. And we could not get it up there.
I think it
just
took
too
6
wet,
hours
and
just to get to like windshield 2 from
Sounds
the river.
fun.
So we ended up leaving it there. Yeah, we
Yeah.
pushed it back to the bottom and
Was
left
it
it there.
buried in snow by the time you came back?
We came back 3 days later. I stole
Yeah.
the winch off my dad's Jeep, and we ran down there, and there was like 3 inches of ice or something inside of it. We were breaking all the ice and the water coming through back into the trail, and luckily it was so nasty out there. No one came out and messed with it. Or
Yeah,
anything.
since it
Yeah.
had snowed, no one else went out there to go wheeling or anything. And I was, losing sleep at night. Like, man, I hope my rig's not stripped by the time I get back out there.
I think snow wheeling looks like so much fun, but it is actually more dangerous than people think.
Mm-hmm.
We went out. Where did we? Did we just go to the Rubicon?
I think Ryan was with us too. That was we did like no rock climbing. We just went to like
But we
on
were
a snow-covered
sliding
road. Yeah.
so
Everyone
much,
spun out, like-
and it was, for me, it was extremely scary.
Yeah, I almost went
And
off a cliff. I
Yeah,
think.
we got really close to the edge, and I was like, "Well, I might die." Like you just, I don't know. I think when you see the photos of people snowmobiling, it looks so plush and fun, and the wheel tread is covered in snow, and you're like, that looks really fun. And then you do it and you're like, it's icy and slippery and I might die and I'm freezing. And this Toyota, he had the whole floorboard was like not covered in carpet anymore, and there was holes in the bottom. So every time we would go through, snow would start like shooting through, and
Yeah.
I hated it.
I like leaned over to like check a gauge because they're down too low, so you can't like read them head on. So I was like looking down below, and as I look up, I'm like spinning in a half circle already. I'm like, whoa, and just kind of turned into it. And like luckily there was like an edge, and my tires just hit the edge, and we stopped. And she's like freaking out. I'm like, well, I guess we're okay.
I hated it. I don't like not having control. You know, he's with the steering wheel this way and then this way. I don't like the feeling of sliding. It's uncomfortable.
We went to go snow wheeling out at the Eagle Lakes area a while ago. I showed up, I think, 15, 20 minutes early. And you're driving down, that road is not maintained at all once you get off the freeway. And the turn off to the staging area is a right-hand turn. I'm like, oh, there it is. And I turned, and I just slid right past it. And I was like, I ended up hitting a berm and then coming back, and I made it back through. And I think it was Ryan, Ron, Justin, and Amy or something all coming down together. And then all of them started sliding different directions. No one made the turn. But luckily, they ended up aiming towards different banks, and no one hit each other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because we were all in a line, and then all of a sudden, one person slams on the brakes to try and make that turn. They're spinning out. Everyone else is trying to slow down, and like there's trucks sideways, and they're like, we're stopping within inches of each other. Somehow, no one hit each other, like within that whole scenario.
The other thing I didn't like is Garrett's Toyota wasn't street legal, so we had to tow it. And so by the time we were done, it was nighttime, and it had started sprinkling, and it was frosty and icy, and so
load it all up.
We loaded up, we're towing, and we're going down. I guess it was just Highway 80.
No, we were at the Rubicon, so we're up in Georgetown.
Oh yeah,
That's right when we loaded up.
And there's patches of black ice.
I think we stopped at Stumpy Meadows is where we unloaded.
And as if I hadn't already had enough of a rough day, I'm like, okay, we're in the car with
Trailer
the heater,
on the
yeah,
ice.
and so then the trailer goes this way and the truck goes this way, and I'm like, well, now we're gonna die.
Yeah, I forgot the trailer brakes were still high from when we went up. Not that high, but like higher for ice. And so as we're driving away, we're maybe going like 20 miles an hour, and I just touch the brakes, and I feel the trailer, jackknife a little bit. I'm like, oh crap, okay. So I turn off the brakes, or turn them down like super low, and I downshift, and then same thing happens. The truck is slowing down, but the trailer's pushing me, so it jackknifes the truck and the trailer now.
And there's a cliff right there too.
Yeah, we actually didn't get that sideways, but I'm like, holy crap.
For
like,
me, it wasn't.
This is like
the feeling again of sliding and having no control. And of course, in the situation, I'm like, Garrett, be careful. Like, why are we doing this? And he's like, I'm trying. And, like I want him
You're
to
making it worse.
I want him to do more. And he's like, no, do less. Yeah. It's like, I'm forgetting Sarah Marshall. Do that, but less. Yeah. So I don't know. Snow wheeling, I think it's fun and it looks great and all, but those conditions are, to me, stressful.
I think Ron actually rolled off of a shelf road when we were out at Signal Peak area.
Oh, yeah.
We were in a group of like 5 rigs going up, and it's a steep shelf road. And we made it almost all the way to the top. Everyone was just in a line and didn't quite make it. So we stopped, and we looked around, and we're like, where did Ron go? He was at the back, and no one had seen him for a while.
Yeah, we waited up top for a few minutes. Like, oh, he's probably just behind. He'll catch up.
Trying to call him and hit him on the CB, and he's all, I rolled off the cliff. And we went down there. Luckily, he's got a full exo cage in his truck. And he rolled all the way over and landed DB the tire. But he's like, I got Chex Mix everywhere. Food was all over the place.
That's what he's the most worried about.
Yeah.
So obviously it was like just a couple rolls. It wasn't.
I think it was just one roll. And as soon as it landed, the tire that first impacted blew out. And all his tools again fell out of the truck.
How many tool sets has he invested in?
Yeah, so by the time we got there, he had just finished like loading his tools back in the bed of the truck, and we're like, what the hell happened? He's like, oh, I slid off the cliff, and he's just down there waiting for us to turn around and find him.
Yeah, what I think of is all the trees that you could hit down that are on the side, or obviously he wasn't down a very steep one, but there's plenty of steep ones. So those. My mind goes straight to those scenarios.
Those trees will save your life, though, too, from going all the way down the cliff.
Totally. But also, if you're going fast enough and you smack into one, or if your window's open, and obviously you need to be wearing your seatbelt at all times. But my mind goes straight to that, and I definitely am not worried about my checks. Difference between men and women.
I get a lot of people ask about, I just want a simple cage for just a little bit of protection. I'm like,
a little bit.
Or they talk about how expensive DOM is or something like that. I'm all, that's your life. I can't just do something super simple. At Stampede this year, we rolled the 4500 car, and I think we were doing like 55 miles an hour. Went over 4 times sideways. It didn't do a single thing to the truck, and that was definitely interesting to be flung around in the car that quick. And then they said, just sit still, and they flipped us back over, and we continued, and it didn't.
That's
really
how you know
stop
you
us
built
or
it right.
Yeah. But it was just like thinking about going off-roading, something simple. You roll, you hit a tree, or you flop or something. That's
I knew a dude.
Safety's super important.
I knew a guy that built a cage for like a Razor, like a UTV, and most of them don't have the door bar, so it's just like that A pillar with no other structure in there. And he endowed, so he went forward, and the cage bent back, and he hit his head on the ground and jammed his neck. He didn't break it or anything, but like he couldn't move his neck for like a week or 2.
Oh, no.
So lucky.
Yeah,
It's very scary. yeah.
And because I think you also built it like low profile, right? So like it
looked cool.
It looked cool, but yeah. So yeah, definitely and who knows what material it was made out of.
So why don't we transition directly into Greg's tip of the week, which is perfect on this subject.
Well, I think tip of the week, we were talking about just, trail prep, making sure you maintain everything and just look over stuff. We had a customer just a little while ago. It came in. We were just going to do some work on a roof for the top of it, and I took a peek underneath. I like to see how people build things because every fabricator is different. A lot of rigs are just built different. And I immediately noticed that the rear double triangulated forelink, the whole cross member had 4 hairline cracks in it. And if that had let go and no one ever noticed it, you'd lose the whole back half of the Jeep right there on the trail. That's really hard to recover while you're out there. So at that point, we're easily able to take care of it and make sure it was going to be right. But if someone didn't catch that and they just, it's my beater rig, just leave it on the trailer or whatever, and then something does break, it can turn a super fun weekend into something horrible.
Okay, well, we want to transition into a couple of rough stuff related things. So Ryan has a new product he wants to talk about.
Yeah, we've been working on it for a few months. We actually just put it up on the website, but we just released the Ford 9 3/4 diff cover. That one, it's for the newer F-150s. There's some Expeditions that have it, some of the E-Series vans. Definitely double check what actually you have under there before you start ordering. It's standard rough stuff cover, 3/8 plate, guaranteed for life. Definitely the next best thing for your Raptor and F-150.
So this product retails for $135. You can find it on our website under the category New Products, but the part number is R2486-A. And it's pretty cool. I think it's been a product that we've talked about for a while, and we get a lot of calls and questions about it. When are we going to do that? When are we going to have it? So I think it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. Any new cover we do, I think, is awesome. The fabricated covers are just cool looking, and they're just like that's been like our tried and true, like number one awesome product since day one, because they're we never have any problems with them. I think we maybe had one person wear through one, maybe.
Yeah, there's a 14 bolt cover a guy had been running for. He was probably one of the first people that bought them, but since he had rubbed it on so many rocks over the years and so many trips, he actually rubbed through the bottom of it until he got to that bottom bolt. So he was actually missing a bolt on it, and he said it still held oil, wasn't leaking, anything like that, but we just warrantied it out and gave him a new one.
So we have an older product that is also tried and true. Ryan, you want to talk about that one?
The Deaver long travel spring under kit. That's like your perches, your U-bolts, and your plates. That one's a popular one for the spring under 2-wheel drive jump truck guys running those 2.5-inch wide Deaver springs. A nice thing about those, it tucks the ends of the U-bolts up above where the leaf springs are, so you don't have to worry about bending them, having issues taking the nut off, or having to take a cutoff wheel to take them apart. It's a weld-on kit. You weld your perch on there. The plates require some welding. We leave that stuff unwelded, just because you're going to be pulling the welder out anyway to put that on, save you some cost just by doing it yourself.
If you have welding questions, contact Greg. So that product retails for $125. The product is DEAV-WIYP. So you can find this under, it looks like it's under
it's under our
Desert
Racer
Pre-Runner
section.
category.
It's also under the swap kit section under the leaf spring.
Cool. And you can use code RoughStuffPodcast for 10% off any of these products at any time. We also have a new product in the works that I was hoping you could talk about, Ryan.
So we recently just came out with the TJ rear bumper that has like the hitch piece and then the rear step. So we decided to sell the rear step stuff separately as well. So kind of do a do-it-yourself style rear step bumper. Comes with a receiver and then the bent tube and the dimple dyed step plates that go over the top of it.
So we hopefully will have that product out. When do you think, Garrett?
I think there will.
We got most of the stuff here. Probably within the next couple of weeks, I think we'll have it listed.
Cool. Okay.
Do you still do the competitive shooting?
No, it's been quite a while.
Oh, really?
I'd like to do it again, but yeah, it was the first Sunday of every month, first or second Sunday of every month in Ione. There's the SDPS, IDPA shooting competitions that I used to do. Yeah. But they're pretty fun.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do this for a while, but I keep not looking into it any further than this.
Well, maybe we'll have to force each other to go. So.
Yeah.
Didn't Stuart, he was our guest on our last podcast, didn't he do one and he got hurt?
Yeah, with the Sacramento Police Department. He had a ricochet. No, a ricochet.
Oh, he had a ricochet.
Yeah, and they're just sitting like back in the tower area. It's like right off the side of the range there. And ricochet hit him in the arm, and he had to go to the hospital like a day or two later to get it pulled out. It actually went.
Why a day or two later? Did he not realize anything was in there?
Yeah, he thought it was just an injury. He didn't realize there was like a foreign object in his body.
Oh, Stuart.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I've had is one of the very first times I went. You're always kind of nervous, and you end up doing things faster than you should. It's one of those things you got to like slow down and just take your time with it. I think we had to shoot from retention or something where you're not supposed to have your arms out. And I had it way too close and fired in the rack, hit my ribs or something, and it didn't quite, release all the way. Nice. So, but every time I've been there, it's always been very safe, very controlled. So
is that the Lincoln one?
It's actually in Ione.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Where's Ione?
It's you go like I usually go all the way down Sunrise to the Jackson Highway, and go down Highway 16 just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
It takes a little bit to get there, but it's pretty nice. I think they usually set up 7 different scenarios or something. They're all CCW based, so it's a semi-hot range where you do carry your firearm and your ammunition and everything on you. The firearm is never loaded unless you're up running the course. But they have 7 courses and like 120 people that go every time. And they're all different scenarios, and they're they're scored based off of time and accuracy. So, and it's kind of first come, first serve. It's super fun, kind of low key. And
did you always do pistol, or did you do 3-gun?
The ones I've gone to are all handgun.
Okay.
So they do have other competitions and other days where you can do multi-firearm. So either shotguns or rifles or a mix of both. We did when I was a young teenager. My dad would drive us up into the Placerville area to take a hunter's safety course. So we talked a lot about, we were always around firearms and stuff growing up, and just making sure everything is super safe, and never point anything you don't plan on destroying, never put your finger on the trigger until you're actually ready. And it's just like wheeling everything, as fun as everything is, it's safety is super important.
Mm-hmm.
So, Garrett, do you want to read a Ruffstuff review? Oh. It is on the other side of that page.
Okay. For the Ruffstuff 1.5" OD steering tube clamp.
Yep.
By Gerald Rife in Indiana. Mm-hmm. The title is Beefy Yet Sexy. I ordered these as a steering stabilizer clamps for my 1.5" DOM high steer kit. I was not disappointed. Very precise machining, finishing, and super thick sidewall makes these clamps a strong point on any tube on your Jeep. The part number is R1697, and they're $34.50 each.
Thanks, Gerald, for that sexy and beefy review.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Greg, for doing this podcast with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Ryan, for sitting in with us.
Oh, yeah, you bet.
So we will put up Greg's website and his website link so you guys can know how to contact him. Do you do any jobs that are not, like, how local will you do a job?
What do you mean, how local?
For your customer base. Do you care?
Like, do you do everything in-house at your business,
Yeah.
or do you ever go out off-site and, like, do work? Or
So people know, like, if they can have the honor of using you.
Yeah. No, I've had people drive from different states over and leave their vehicles with me. I've had things towed in, shipped in, all kinds of stuff. There are some, I try and stay in the shop as much as I can. We're not a big like retail store where we do mostly labor stuff, but because I do have a location, we do have normal operating hours. There's just me and one other guy. So I try and be there as much as I can, but I do on occasion schedule mobile work. Usually the mobile work we do is like we do shock servicing and tuning. So we'll do tuning sessions with people, and we'll go out to race events and work with a bunch of the racers. Like, we're obviously not in the shop for the week of the hammers because we're usually down there. There are some jobs where we've been able to go out mobily, or someone's been having a problem with something, and sometimes after hours I'll try and swing by and see what's going on. And just, I always like helping people, so I try and do everything I can. But obviously, if I'm not at the shop all the time, there's a lot of people I might be missing out on because they show up, waste their time, and I'm not there, and that's kind of rude. So I try to be there as much as I can.
Well, we'll link your contact information so people can call you and email you. And then also, what's your Instagram handle?
I think it's just Rock and Road Performance.
It is? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So if you guys have any suggestions or comments, please email us, podcast@roughstuffinc.com. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.